It is episode number one of the brand new podcast, Dubkir Depot. Don't go anywhere. We've got the debut for you right now. All right, here it is. This is the debut episode of Dubkir Depot. It is the official podcast of Dubkir Media. My name is Kirk Orndorff. I am the founder and owner of Dubkir Media. I'm the one who you'll see at all the shows. And you know what? We're here. We're going to have a good time trying our next venture in the business world. We've got the DVDs. We've done really well with the calendars. Um, our next step here, we're gonna try the podcast. We're gonna have it out for you on all the platforms, and we're just gonna have a good time. We're gonna talk about trains. We're gonna talk about the prototype trains. We're gonna talk about model trains. I'm gonna tell you about some of my experiences while we're out chasing trains. I've got 24 DVDs as we currently stand, so I'll be able to tell you about those, give you behind the scenes stories, kind of how they were able to come to be as programs, and we'll have all that for you. We're going to have lots of episodes moving forward as we go into this. But to get things started, though, I figure you should probably know a little bit about me. Who is this guy? He's just talking to us about trains, and who is he? What's his background? So I figure we've got a few different things that I can talk about, give you some of my background. Um, we've got the train side of my background. We've got my professional background, which allowed me to learn how to do all of this. And I figure I would give you a little bit of story about how the business got started and what my first few steps were when it came to that sort of thing. So let's dive right in, shall we? So our first thing that we get dive into is our rail fanning history, our history within trains and the railroad and all of that. So we got to go to the Wayback Machine. I started going trackside, eh, maybe not by choice with my dad when I was maybe two or three. No, it started to become by choice when I was three, four, or five. So it's been a while. But the first times I went trackside, it was maybe because my dad was watching us by himself and he wanted to get a picture of a train. So our train history is firmly rooted in family, and he actually got it from his father, my grandpa. So I mean, the trains go all the way back to World War II when my grandpa started really liking trains in central Minnesota. And his favorite railroad was the Great Northern, naturally, and he started getting Trains magazine in the late 40s or early 50s, and that wound up getting passed down to my dad. My dad was one of three brothers, um, and so, he caught the bug, looked at all of the Trains magazines. He started getting his own Trains magazines, I believe, in the 70s. Um, and when he moved out to Colorado, which is where we're based out of, he met a few people in the area, started going around rail fanning places, and when my mom was working, he was usually a different shift or something. They would kind of alternate their shifts, and if he heard a train blowing, it was pack up my older sister and I into the car and head over, get some shots. And so that's kind of where things started. And then, I started going on actual day trips with him when I was maybe four. I do remember getting the E units, the UP's E units on an excursion between Denver and Laramie. In fact, Pentrex actually did a tape on that run. In fact, there's a scene, I believe they're in Eaton, and they show a park, and you can see a couple adults with a kid running around. I'm the kid. That's me. Um, then I remember riding in an Operation Lifesaver special out of Cheyenne, between Cheyenne and Granite. Um, Actually got to go see Tennessee Pass a couple times before it got shut down by UP. The first time I went, it was actually still pure SP, which was really cool. You know, first train I saw had 9 SPAC 44s on it on a coal load. So, I mean, that'd get me in the time machine right now. Um, so a couple trips to the Tennessee Pass, and we also got, we're an hour from Cheyenne, where Cheyenne is still a really good place to go. Just sit, relax, and let trains go by. It was even better in the late '90s because you had color, you had fresh mergers, you had CNW, you had SP. Um, it's still fun, but one train and 196 cars pulled by three locomotives, it's not as fun. But at this point, where is as fun? So lots of history leading up to that point. I got my first film camera when I was 13. It was for my 13th birthday, or excuse me, Christmas. Christmas when I was 13. And my very first picture was of a Valmont coal power sitting there with a couple SP and a CNW, and the local was in the background with the BNSF local was in the background with an H140 and a couple blue and yellow Santa Fe's, and so that was where I started with film, and so I shot film up until my 15th birthday when I got my first digital camera, and that digital camera was just a little Nikon Coolpix. I mean, it had video, but there was no sound on the video. It was standard def video, so I mean, you can kind of tell when roughly this was. Um, and then I got my first DSLR. It was kind of a combination 18th birthday, Christmas, as well as a high school graduation present. So that was the D40, and I had that one for about 8 years until I had got the camera that I have now, a Nikon D3400. And so that's the photography side. Videography, I actually started shooting our video on tape when I was about 10 and a half, almost right before I turned 11. And I actually shot our video for quite a while, 2, 3 years. Mostly was monopod mounted. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. Um, but then when I got the digital camera is really when my dad started shooting the video throughout that time. But a lot of cool stuff in that era. This was the early 2000s, so you had lots of rainbow consists. Dash nines weren't really as prevalent as they are now. Um, a lot of really cool stuff there, and so I got video of all of that, and um, pictures aren't as much, although there were some. Like I would start riding my bicycle. We live a couple blocks from the tracks, and I'd ride my bicycle over and get a northbound coming. We live at a particular spot on a track warrant line where they would call in on the radio that they were approaching the siding, which is a couple miles south of us. So if they called out approaching that siding, off to the tracks I could go. And they would use the lead identifier, and I mean every once in a while you would catch MRL 309 north approaching, and when that's the case, you get on that bicycle very quickly. And this was all pre driver's license, so that's kind of where the rail fanning starts. And once I got out of college and started getting the big boy jobs, which you'll hear here in a minute, I uh, I started traveling, and so it's turned into, I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff trackside, and it's all been really fun, and it's just a really cool hobby, I think. Um, and it to me, it is what a hobby is supposed to be. It's fun. It's fun. So diving over to the professional side of things, we'll touch back into, I started shooting the family video when I was 10 or 11 years old. So I mean, that's been a while. That's been a while, and then you get the photography stuff, but then kind of came into high school, and they had this program called KLHS. It was kind of like a daily. It was basically a video version of the announcements, but it kind of taught you a little bit as to how to run a news style program. Um, and then went to college. I went to college in central Nebraska where I was a broadcasting major, and the way that the program worked was I started off in broadcast journalism because that's just kind of what they had. That's what they had available, and I believe it was during my sophomore year they changed the catalog on us, and so I was then given the choice spring of sophomore year. I could stay in broadcast journalism, but then I would have to find a minor, which my faculty advisor said I was nowhere near a minor, and or I could switch to the new catalog, which was just broadcasting. So just a broadcasting major. And then you could choose one of three areas of emphasis. You had sports emphasis, news emphasis, and marketing. Well, news was no, we're not doing news. So it was down between sports and marketing. And we had a very good sports broadcasting department. That's where a lot of us actually chose our emphasis. um, and so we had a lot of fun doing all that kind of stuff, and so I was broadcasting major with a sports emphasis, and we did a lot of broadcasting of games. So starting off with freshman year, um, I I auditioned and made the sports anchor for our weekly news program. I auditioned and wound up being assigned color commentator for our volleyball team for TV broadcasts, which ultimately wound up getting simulcasted on the radio as well. Um, and so I mean, we're talking fall of freshman year. I was on board with everything. I was right in the thick of things, and um, then as things kind of moved along, sophomore year comes around. I start doing a weekly radio show on our radio station, 90.1 FM. And so that's kind of where I learned how to do this kind of thing. You know, you're just talking, you're using your voice. The biggest difference between that and what I'm doing right now is I got to play music in between. So I only had to talk for 3, 4 minutes at a shot. Little different when we're at 10 minutes right now, and you're just trying to go. It's different. It's difficult. It is more difficult doing this, but you know we're here for the long haul. We're gonna give it a shot. Um, and then I was able to move from color commentator to play by play on the volleyball broadcasts, which at this point we're now fully simulcast on our TV station and on our radio station. Um, I was not doing the news anymore because they wanted me more behind the scenes, um, which is understandable. As you kind of grow within the department, you do have to do a lot more of the producing, the editing, a lot more stuff to make the program happen, as opposed to standing behind the desk and telling people what happened. So that was where I kind of shifted off from the news, and there's a reason why that news program was kind of a large reason why we did not even think about doing news as our emphasis. Um, but then spring of sophomore year is when I became our TV's sports director. And so for 2 full calendar years, they did it by calendar year, not academic year. So for 2 full calendar years, I was in charge of every sports broadcast, all the sports content that went out over our TV channel, as well as at this point now we were getting pretty prominent into streaming on the web. And we'll get to it here in a minute, but we actually got very well, highly done my senior year. Um, Junior year rolls around, you know, we're still rocking it. We're more involved in the producing side now at this point. Um, every single year, our media department was paid by the NAIA, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, to broadcast the women's basketball tournament in Sioux City, Iowa. So we actually were getting paid. The department was getting paid. We got credit hours and resume building, um, to go broadcast the NAIA tournament every single year, and so that was when you do 31 games in 4 days, it's exhausting. So I mean, it's there's a lot of stuff there, and this is all just college. I mean, I'm not getting paid for any of this stuff yet. And senior year, we uh we had our what I would say is probably where we peaked. The entire program peaked. We One specific day in general that I can think of, we had a football game at 1 p.m. At 6 p.m., we had a volleyball conference championship game, and at it was supposed to be 7 p.m., wound up being 8:30 due to rain. Had the men's soccer conference championship, and that particular day we had, if I remember correctly, 9,000 viewers to our website, and the previous high prior to that was like 2,500. So I mean, we absolutely obliterated the records that we had on our website, HC Media Online, and we nailed all 3 broadcasts. We got so many compliments on all 3 of them. I think that at the most for the football game was like 800 people watching the football game at once. If I remember correctly, the volleyball game wasn't far behind that, maybe 700, 650, 700. And then the men's soccer game, I believe, at its peak was like 550. So I mean, we had all sorts of people watching this, and I'd like to think we nailed it. We had a really good crew. We had a really good crew working there. But then that leads us into what I did after college. I got a job a few months afterwards doing some high school sports commentating and hosting a show. That didn't last real long because by this point, schools didn't need to hire a specialty company to stream their games. They could literally just put a camera up, and somebody holds the tripod back and forth, and so I didn't get to do that real long. But right around the same time as that was ending, I got a job working at Altitude TV in Denver. That's the channel that streams the Avalanche and the Nuggets games. And I was working behind the scenes at this point. You know, it's very difficult to get on camera in this industry, which is where I was actually best at. Um, my senior year, I actually won a first place award nationally for sports reporting, and so I'm comfortable on camera. I know how to do it. I can move my hands and use my hands to emphasize what I'm doing, you know, as opposed to just having them sitting in my lap or in my pockets or just on the table flat palmed, and you know, that kind of stuff. Um, and we also had localized state competitions and stuff where I think I won 4 first place, a couple second places, several honorable mentions, and this wasn't just for on camera. This was for editing. This was for, you know, the actual filming, the camera work, on and on and on. So, but at this point, I'm at altitude. I'm behind the scenes. Um, it was a fun job. I wouldn't want to have done it very long. Um, because it was the position that's monitoring the channel 24/7. It's called master control operator. They the sales and the channel manager give them a log, and you basically have to make sure that what plays is what is on the log. 24/7, 365. I was on night shift working, you know, my I started my shift at 11 p.m., got off at 7 a.m., and then had to fight Denver traffic at 7 a.m. So that was fun. Um, That that lasted a few years. I think I was just shy of 4 years. And that's kinda when the idea started for Dubker Media. And we have to go back to high school for the starting of Dubker Media. My dad was actually trying to make this same thing work with the DVDs, and he had 3 of them that were almost fully edited, and they were getting ready for the next step, which for me is narration. And, um and we'll get into that in a future program. But so they were getting ready for narration, and then we had a hard drive crash. And we didn't know at the time that they were actually saved in a second location. And so he kind of put the pause on that. This was probably 6 years after roughly he had started editing them. So, and there were 3 programs: Tennessee Pass, the Chicago Northwestern, and Wyoming, and BNSF on Crawford Hill. And this was kind of when the BNSF on Crawford Hill was really colorful. You had 60s and 75s as helper sets. We literally had helper sets. There was one green, one H2, and one war bonnet. So I mean, really colorful stuff. Um, and that's the only one I haven't been able to find because I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I found um, I found all of them saved in a secondary location, and all the clips were still there. Everything was still there, and so that's actually two of the programs that I have available now. And unfortunately, they are DVD only. They're not available in Blu-ray. The rest of our videos, though, are in fact available in Blu-ray. Um, but I've got this kind of in my back pocket is he's been trying to do this, and now I'm working in Denver, and when I would get off at 7 a.m. on my weekend or something, I would check the ATCS throughout the area, and the Moffat was usually very busy in the mornings, and um, that was kind of where I would go. And next thing you knew, I had a lot of footage of the Moffat between Denver and East Portal. And so I just started putting it together. It's like, okay, well, what all do I have? Let's start at Union Station. Let's work our way west. Let's get stuff at North Yard. Let's get stuff at Pecos. Let's get stuff at Sheridan. And it turns out that I was most of the way there. Just needed a couple locations. And so during the summers, we had 3 day every other week. We had a 3 day weekend. Just use my third day, go hit the Moffat, go get those other locations, and next thing you know, we're good. We've got ourselves a Moffat video. And at the same time, one of our favorite places to rail fan is Crawford Hill. And I had done really well at Crawford Hill. I had used it on a couple of those summer 3 day weekends. And it's like, whoa, hey, all I need are these couple of horseshoe curves, and then I've got enough for a Crawford DVD. So it and that's kind of where things started to go from there. Um, then my time at altitude came to an end, and I was thinking, all right, let's try to get this done. Let's try to get the company going and try to get DVDs going. And I did kind of a cost analysis. What's it going to cost? And um, okay, well, maybe I need something to give myself the money, and that's when I took a job with our local parks department. And I'll tell you what, there is something to be said about the relaxing nature of sitting on a mower for 7 hours at a shot, just going back and forth on a mower. I got a lot of planning done on that mower. I got the name of the company thought of on the mower. I got future trips, videos that are now our videos, um, thought of while I was out there. I would plan rail fanning trips while I was on the mower, and so that actually became really a big thing when it came to the business and planning for it and what I wanted to see moving forward, and it was all just really really good stuff. And so that's kind of where it all came from. And um, so I was able, when I launched in 2021, the early spring of 2021 is when I launched. Went to a show in Cheyenne that year, did okay. Went to the Rocky Mountain Train Show in Loveland in the fall, did actually really well. And up until just a year and a half or so ago, those were kind of the only shows I would do, or were Denver, Cheyenne, Loveland. I was actually fortunate enough to be invited to the Spring Creek show in Deshler, Nebraska in 2023. Um, that was kind of the only show, though, up until about a year and a half ago that I had really traveled to go do. And even at that, it was still a show that I could leave after I got off on Friday, go set up, and then do the show and be back in time for Monday morning at work. So um, that was kind of how all of that got going. And then my time at the city of Loveland ended not well about a year and a half ago. And I figured from there, it's like, all right, we're gonna dive into this. I actually had a plan because they were really starting to get under my skin. So I had a plan to get of what I wanted to do when um, when my time did end. And so sure enough, I hit the ground running. I did more work for this business in the 3 days after that ended than I did in like the previous 8 months. It was crazy how motivated I was to do this, and that's when I started traveling to shows. You know, my first show after that had happened was Train Fest in Milwaukee. Um, and then I went to Salt Lake a couple weeks later. In between those was the Rocky Mountain Train Show in Loveland, and um, then I wasn't able to really get a lot of the shows winter of 24, 25, um, like I did here in the winter of 25, 26. But spring of 2025, I was able to get to several shows, did really well. Did a few shows in the summer as well, and did well with those. And now I think I went to 13 shows in 2025. And I've already, as I'm sitting right now, been to, um, what was it, seven shows already here in 2026 as I'm sitting here. So the Denver show will be number 8, and we're looking forward to growing, expanding, and moving things forward. So we think that the podcast here, this is going to be kind of our next project that will help move us forward as a company, and help get the name out there, and really get us a good following. So the magical clock here is telling me that it is time. I do want to tell you though the reasoning for all of this, the motivation that I had for this. And it was a meme that I had seen, or just an image, pick whatever you're looking for, online. I'll show it to you on YouTube. If you're listening, I'll read it for you. It is: your first workout will be bad. Your first podcast will be bad. Your first speech will be bad. Your first video will be bad. Your first anything will be bad. But you can't make your 100th without making your first. So put aside your ego and start. And so that was a little bit of motivation for me. I actually saved that about a year ago when I very first had the podcast idea. Um, Really, just putting my ego aside and going has been one of the bigger challenges. The biggest challenge was finding a name. You would not believe how many podcast names are out there and are already taken. An idea that I'd had was Along the Tracks. Well, guess what? There's a racing podcast with that. There was I had thought of maybe On the Rails. There's a horse racing podcast by that name. So it's like I had to figure something out, and I was finally given the name at a train show in Minnesota. Well, not given the actual name, something similar, where it then kind of light bulb jogged the memory, and so here we have it. So I want to thank you for joining us. Um, be sure to head over to YouTube and subscribe if you haven't already. Uh, Head over to Facebook, Instagram, give us a follow on each of those. Head over to X and give us a follow. Our last tweet was in 2021, so we're doing great on that one. But be sure to follow us, subscribe if you haven't, and we will see you down the road at our next ones. So thanks for joining us.